You'll have to.
Okay, I started it by.
You'll have that information, and we'll try to get that sent out to everyone if you're unable to access that through the export feature. But my name is Emily Airy. I'm the executive director of the Hospice Foundation. We also have Amanda Gregg with Dover Foundation. She's multitasking, trying to write down who's attending and doing a bunch of different things, letting people in. So if you need her, you might want to send her a direct message. But I do want to go ahead and introduce our very talented speaker, Miss Melissa Leroy. You guys, if you were with us in February, you got to hear Melissa. She actually is an instructor for Duke University. She teaches nonprofit classes with Duke in Western Carolina. She lives the next county over. We're lucky to have her really close to us here in Shelby and be able to pick her brain. But I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, and she has kind of done a great job to get this crammed down to an hour, but we wanted to make sure this was accessible for everyone, something that wouldn't take too much time out of your day, but that would also help you in your organization in achieving your goals. So I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily and Amanda, for inviting me to do this.
You didn't unmute it, it looks like, or go up here.
Yeah, I may have to introduce myself.
Hang on one second. Amanda, if you want to, could you
Yeah,
possibly mute?
I have.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Once again, welcome. Thank you so much to Amanda and Emily for inviting me to do this for you today. I have a lot of information, as Emily alluded to, crammed into an hour presentation for you. While we go through the presentation, so your questions don't get lost or you don't forget them, please make sure Amanda is going to be monitoring the chat as we go throughout today's presentation. I will leave some time at the end of today's presentation to answer those questions. But if you want to go ahead and chat those or put those in the chat box throughout the presentation, at the end, Amanda will ask those questions first, and then we will open it up for a group Q&A where we will invite all of you guys to unmute yourself and ask away as time allows. And then also at the end of the presentation, you'll have my contact information as well, so if you need to reach out to me. So again, thank you so much and welcome to the presentation on fundraising for nonprofits with a shallow staff and volunteer pool. You can kind of see the agenda for today. We're going to talk about the challenges that we face as nonprofit organizations in the fundraising arena, engaging volunteers, and then some really creative fundraising ideas that you can implement in your nonprofit organization and or collaborate with other nonprofit organizations. So as you know, next week's presentation is going to be on collaboration among nonprofit organizations. So hopefully how you can take some of the ideas that we are presenting today and collaborate with other nonprofit organizations. So once again, I am so thrilled to be here today to talk to you about one of my ultimate favorite topics. So if you've heard me speak in the past, fundraising is it for me, everybody. I love talking fundraising. So, and especially fundraising for nonprofit organizations with limited resources. So kind of stretching what we have as far as resources and then really thinking outside of the box as well. So for many of you, I know that when we say fundraising, it can seem like it's a daunting task, especially if you don't have a large staff or a large volunteer pool. However, fear not. Hopefully today's presentation, we're going to explore many strategies that can help your organization overcome these challenges and achieve your fundraising goals. So before we kind of dive into the nitty-gritty, for those of you who may not have been at the Impact seminar where I spoke, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So I've actually been working in the nonprofit sector for over 2 decades. So I actually transitioned from corporate America into the nonprofit sector in 1999. And I have seen firsthand the incredible impact that all organizations, nonprofit organizations, including yours, have on their communities. Again, I do know how difficult it can be to raise funds, especially when you're working with situations like all of you are with that limited staff and volunteer pool. That's why I'm so passionate about sharing all of this with you today. And we'll look at some really wonderful resources as well for your nonprofit organizations when it comes to events that you can do with limited staff and volunteers. All right, so the challenge. We know that a significant challenge is, once again, raising funds with limited resources. Without the backing, without being a large nonprofit organization, without the backing of larger corporations or wealthy donors, we as smaller nonprofit organizations must rely on creative fundraising methods and community support to meet those goals. So a lot of the events that I'm going to be talking about today, I will walk you through how to get the community involved in a lot of these fundraising events for your nonprofit organizations. So with that being said, we must be strategic in our approach to maximize our efforts with this limited staff and volunteer pool that we have. So maximizing our staff resources. So this is one of the most important strategies when I present to smaller nonprofit organizations, because when you have a small staff, your staff members wear multitude of different hats within the organization. The same thing is true with volunteers as well. So if you're coming here today for this lunch and learn and your nonprofit organization is solely volunteer run, then you too as well are wearing a multitude of different hats. So the goal here is to prioritize the tasks. So nonprofit organizations, small ones with that limited staff and volunteers, need to focus on activities that are going to have the largest impact on fundraising. And so when we talk about that, we need to keep also in mind fundraising activities that include building relationships with donors, and then also organizing the community around these fundraising events. So in doing so, by prioritizing these tasks, nonprofits, we can then assure that we are using our staff resources in the most effective way as possible. So other key strategies for maximizing staff resources is also to streamline the process. So we're going to be looking at some ideas and some events today that are going to prioritize our staff resources, our volunteer resources, but also streamline the process where there's not going to be a lot involved in this. We also need to look for ways to automate tasks and reduce the administrative burdens as well. So some of these ideas can include online fundraising platforms. We're going to talk about some of those today for small nonprofit organizations. And then also tools to manage those donor relationships and track contributions and donations, corporate support, grant contributions. So by streamlining these processes, then what we can do as smaller nonprofit organizations is free up our staff time for more strategic activities. So a couple of really good examples here is donor software. So if you haven't taken a look at some donor software that is available today, I would highly recommend that you do so. So here we can track contributions, we can track donors themselves, corporate sponsorships, and foundations. One of the donor software companies that I personally love because I used in corporate America and then I continue to use it in the nonprofit sector is Salesforce. So the majority of small nonprofit organizations are able to get through the Salesforce Foundation, Salesforce for free here in North Carolina. So if you've not checked out that resource, that's a wonderful way to streamline that process for your volunteers and staff in creating a donor software. There are also a multitude of CRM softwares out there that will actually help you identify what we call in the fundraising world sleepers. So these are going to be constituents that are on your donor database that are going to be able to give a large sum of money to your nonprofit organization. And you may not even realize that they're actually on your donor database as well. And so how this then relates to fundraising, right, activities for nonprofit organizations, we know that the majority of funding for nonprofit organizations come from individual donors, but also it's going to allow you with these community fundraising events to then identify these individual donors and invite them to continue building that relationship with the donors as well. That is one of the main key components of a great fundraising plan and a very successful fundraising yearly plan for a nonprofit organization is ensuring that you are continually building those donor relationships for your nonprofit. So let's talk a little bit about engaging volunteers. So we all know that small nonprofit organizations typically start out with no staff at all. It is volunteer run. Volunteers saw this need in the community in which they serve. Someone wasn't doing this, or it was not being done efficiently and effectively for the community. So this group of nonprofit volunteers came together and they have created this nonprofit organization. So many of you would probably agree when I say volunteers are the lifeblood of any and all nonprofit organization. They are there to provide the extra hands and especially the hearts needed to make not only our nonprofit organization successful, but also our fundraising efforts successful as well. So in order to engage volunteers, your nonprofit organization must offer meaningful opportunities that align with the volunteers' interest and skills. These tasks can include event planning, so planning the event themselves, social media management. So whatever social media platform your nonprofit organization is currently on, allowing a volunteer to kind of take that over. You're in charge of the Facebook post, you're in charge of the Twitter post, whatever that may look like for your organization. And then also donor outreach. So making sure that we're reaching those donors, inviting them personally to our fundraising events. So by involving volunteers in these activities, they become invested in the success of your organization and they feel valued for their contribution. One of the main mistakes that I see nonprofit organizations make with volunteers is, oh, come on down, right? So let's just say, I'm looking at the screen here. Let's just say that Joshua's nonprofit organization is recruiting volunteers. We have a multitude of volunteer opportunities for you. Please come down and we'll assign you a volunteer opportunity. That is a huge mistake. Again, volunteers want to make sure that what you need aligns with their interest and their skill set or a skill set that they want to learn. So making sure that we have duties outlined. So what volunteer opportunities and duties do we need? And making sure that we have a job description for those. Advertise your volunteer opportunities in the exact same way you would a staff position. What is it that you need a volunteer to do for your organization? All right, so fundraising ideas for you. A major fundraising event can raise significant awareness and revenue for your nonprofit organization. We've already established undoubtedly larger nonprofit organizations have an advantage when it comes to recruiting manpower for their fundraisers. However, as small nonprofit organizations, we too can still run very successful fundraising events with much smaller staff and volunteer bases. So this begs to the question, right? And I'm sure many of you are asking, okay, Melissa, what type of events then lend themselves to small nonprofit organizations with very small staff and volunteer pools? So you can see here, it was very hard for me. I'm going to be honest with you. And I kind of shared this with Amanda and Emily before today's presentation. It was kind of hard for me. For those of you who've heard me present before, I can come up with some very creative fundraising ideas. And a lot of these that you're going to see today, I have personally been involved in. It was very hard for me to dwindle this down to only 8. So, but I do know that in addition to having limited staff and volunteers, we also have limited time here today for this lunch and learn for the hour. And I wanted to make sure that there's plenty of time for questions and answers. after. So let's talk then. Let's just dive right in. Let's talk about some of these events and how a small nonprofit organization can put on this event and be very, very successful. So one of the things that we are seeing post-COVID, and I know that this is a lot of questions that I'm getting here recently, is, Melissa, what has really changed since COVID, and how has this kind of shaken up the nonprofit sector? And I deal with this day in and day out in the multitude of presentations that I give. One innovation that we're seeing post-COVID is that it's opened so many doors for nonprofit organizations, regardless of their size, to appeal to a much larger donor database, whether it's statewide, whether it's countywide, whether it's worldwide, whatever that looks like for your organization. This is some of the innovation that I'm seeing, is it's opened so many doors for nonprofit organizations. This was a nonprofit organization that you can see here that in 2020, they kind of had to take their actual auction online. So instead of the in-person, you can see here on the slide that they've kind of got this crossed out to now, guess what? You can attend this event on your sofa. Okay, so this was their virtual auction. And so this is one innovative fundraising idea that small nonprofit organizations can very succinctly and successfully execute with a very shallow staff and volunteer pool. This allows your nonprofit, again, to reach a wider audience and eliminates the need for that physical space and or all of the logistics that come with renting a physical space, the liability to insurance, all of that. To make, though, the auction more engaging, consider partnering. Okay, so this is where that kind of business sponsorship corporation kind of comes into play here with local businesses. You really must offer very unique items and or experiences for your auction items. So in this situation, you have to know your donor database. And this is where a donor database software is going to help you with those analytics to know exactly those demographics that are on your donor database. So you can break this down with the donor software any way that you would like. You can filter it for people who have paid attention to your nonprofit organization. Maybe you met them at a community event where you had a table, an open house, a chamber after hours or before hours event, or they've actually given you money and or volunteer time. So you can filter this however you want, but know your donor database, know what is going to sell and what is going to be of interest to your donor database. So you can see here, they actually had some really nice featured items here. There was a trip here. There was a alcohol tasting. They only did 4 high ticketed, right, auction items. One of the largest mistakes that I see when I get involved with organizations and virtual auctions is they think more is better. Honestly, it's not. So you want those items that are going to appeal to that database and that are going to really get the highest ticket amount possible for your organization. So you can see here, several of the items went over $2,000. There was actually 2 trips here, I believe, one for out west moose viewing. I'll spit it out here in a second. Trip, and then one also to Asia as well, and then along with the tasting. So very unique items. Hopefully you will agree with me here. Very unique items, and they raised a lot of money. So if you kind of tally this up for a small nonprofit organization, that is a lot of money for one evening event. Some of you probably on today's presentation may not raise this amount in 1 year for your nonprofit organization, or this may take you half the year to raise this. Another interesting thing that has evolved since COVID. So when COVID impacted this country and the world, what happened was all of us were at home. So it gave actually the technology field a lot of time to really develop what we're seeing now as artificial intelligence or AI. So there's a lot of software out here now available, right, such as with the CRM software to allow you to identify sleepers, but there's also now an auction AI as well that helps nonprofit organizations in identifying where to send out, right, your auction information to help your organization get some of the highest bids. And we're, not even halfway through today's presentation, but what I would really like to do real quickly is scroll back to the beginning of the presentation, and I'm going to go quickly through these slides and kind of how AI has morphed into just about every sector that there is right now. This entire presentation, including the graphics, was developed by an AI software for all of you today. So I wanted to use this kind of as how can AI help you in maximizing staff and volunteer resources as well as a small nonprofit organization. So basically what I did for today's presentation is verbally spoke into my smartphone and dictated the slides, dictated kind of the theme that I wanted, and all of my notes for today's presentation. This was developed in probably less than 35 seconds by AI. So not too bad considering this would have normally probably taken me well over 2 hours to develop and all of the graphics, etc., for today's presentation. Another effective fundraising strategy is to launch what is known as a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. This involves recruiting supporters to create their own fundraising pages for your nonprofit organization and ask their networks to donate. By leveraging the power of social media, that peer-to-peer fundraising, the friend-to-friend ask, and personal connections, your nonprofit organization can raise significant funds with minimal staff involvement. So this is actually the start of my birthday fundraising campaign for a nonprofit organization located here in North Carolina that I am involved in, Shining Hope Farms. Very near and dear to my heart, their veterans program that they have. And so you can kind of see I did for my birthday campaign a fundraiser for that. Not only did I just do this online, but I also did this in person as well. So if you're a close friend, family member, every year for my birthday, you're invited to my house outdoor kitchen for a party. And everybody who comes to that knows now that they have to bring a contribution to whatever nonprofit organization that I am also fundraising for. So for this peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, I did have a donor step up and match the gifts that were donated. So online and in person was well over $2,000. So Shining Hope Farms got close to $5,000 for just this one birthday giving campaign for that specific horse that allows veterans to deal with any type of emotional, physical PTSD issues that they have. So here you also have another example of kind of the peer-to-peer fundraising as well. So this is in Charlotte, so not too far from us. And virtual campaigns right now, post-COVID, are all the rage. So taking what used to be an in-person event and seeing if you can also create a virtual online presence as well. So these online fundraisers use individual participants and sometimes team competition to take money via social networks. So there are a lot of groups nationally that have converted their traditional run, walk, rides. The ideas here are absolutely endless of what you can do. We're actually even seeing a lot of walking tours. The home tours that we typically have here in the Southeast, those are also going virtual as well, where someone is walking around with a smartphone with the camera, right, and leading you through all of these homes, but you have to purchase a ticket for that as well in order to have the URL to view those homes, any of the historic buildings, etc. Scavenger hunts. Oh my goodness. For all the nonprofit leaders on here today, Scavenger hunts, other treasure hunting games have existed for hundreds of years across the globe. There is plenty of time to perfect scavenger hunts and events within your community, and I'm going to talk about that as well. It is very possible to run a very successful scavenger hunt with less than 10 staff and 10 volunteers, especially if you are in any type of historical city with public art installations, unique architecture, and or just historic significance. And guess what? Downtown Shelby is one of those. I could go on and on. So rather than a list of items that guests must collect, the newest twist that we're seeing right now on scavenger hunts is having teams take pictures to cross found items and or locations off their lists. So you can list the scavenger hunt items by name, or as an organization, you can hint at them with riddles or those obscure historical facts. Now, if your nonprofit organization is going the picture taking route, you can largely eliminate the need for volunteers. So you'll only need volunteers to help create the clues and then tally up, right, the team's points to determine at the end which team won. So if you want to make the gathering of their photos even easier, consider creating a unique Facebook group for each team. So you can set then the scavenger hunt time limit, then base their photos on the correct items photographed and upload to their Facebook group, because it's going to kind of timestamp that as well. So there you can then make sure that you elect a team leader and make them a moderator of the group so that they can upload the images and post them to the group. You can even do the same thing on Instagram as well. So it's not limited to just Facebook. If some of you are like, we don't do Facebook, that's fine. Instagram as well, because Instagram allows pictures. Just make sure that all participants tag each of their scavenger hunt photos with a specific hashtag. So that way you can find them and track them easily. And then the day of the event, of course, would need volunteers to man the registration table, the donation table. Hopefully you have a way for people at the table to donate, sell snacks, maybe refreshments, bottled water. If this is going to be, during the summer months, the fall months where it's still a little warm outside, and then pass out the team's scavenger hunt list as well. So this is right next door to all of you here in Rutherford County. So this actually took place, it's going to take place this Saturday. So this is on our Rails to Trails. So this is the Thermal Belt Amazing Race. And so this is the first year that they are doing this. This is, as you can see on this slide here, this is their event page on Facebook. And I would highly recommend, if any of these ideas really resonate with you and your nonprofit organization today, is if this is a first event, making sure to track that impact. I'm hopeful. I've been involved in this just a little bit to ask questions about this event, but what I'm hopeful that this organizing group is going to be able to do is track the impact that it has locally on the community. So if there's teams coming from out of town, where are they staying, what gift shops they're visiting, what restaurants they're visiting, create your own special hashtag for that, for this event, dining, right, in Rutherford County, dining in Rutherfordton, dining in Forest City. For you guys, it would be, dining in Cleveland County, dining in Shelby, whatever that may look like. So that way you can easily search that hashtag, because what this is going to allow your nonprofit organization to do with future events like this one is you're going to be able to track that impact. So when you go to secure corporate sponsors for this event, you can say that we had X number of dollars contributed to the local economy via travel and tourism, right? So how many more people did we bring into Cleveland County, into downtown Shelby? How many people actually dined right at the local restaurants, stayed overnight at the hotels, the bed and breakfast, whatever that may look like for your county. So making sure when you are looking at implementing one of these events or an event that you have an idea for, ensure that you can track the impact for your organization. And I'll talk a little bit more about impact when we wrap things up in just a few moments. Another great fundraising event idea that you can execute with a handful of volunteers is hosting and holding an English style tea party. So everybody, you see me smiling. I love this. This is one of my favorite events. I have been involved in tea parties in a variety of different organizations, from down in Wellington, Florida at the Equestrian Center, to the Equestrian Center over in Tryon, North Carolina. We used to host the Mad Hatter Tea Party there, to a Mother's Day, mother and daughter tea at a local United Methodist Church as a fundraiser. This is the type of event that really creates for your nonprofit organization a captive audience in a low-key, relaxing atmosphere. And for those of you who know me, I absolutely look forward to events. I love getting dressed up. I love going to events, right? However, know who is on your donor database. So if this is not something that you're like, I can't see our volunteers or our staff or our donors getting dressed up for an English style tea party, this may not be the right fit for you. And you don't have to go as an extravagant as the one event that you see here. As you can see, they went all out, all out. Everybody did for this one. So how this works. So typically you could, if you wanted to, you could obtain the services of a caterer to help you with this event, or volunteers also could be tasked with brewing different kinds of tea and serving the tea to your guest. They could also be tasked with making the scones for the tea as well, or this may just be tea by itself. You may not want the liability of serving food. Whatever is most convenient for your organization. We also typically designate a couple of volunteers to wash teacups between servings of tea, while the rest serve the tea and then collect the cups for washing as well. We love to encourage conversation among the guests. I love for the nonprofit leaders, whether they're staff or volunteer, to insert yourself into the chats as well by kind of milling around, right? Building those relationships, talking about your nonprofit organization and what you do and how you do it and your impact with those in attendance. Once again, you could offer those easy to eat finger foods at the table that are prepared ahead of time. You could even, if you did not want the liability of volunteers making this, you could partner with a local bakery or restaurant if they have a really good pastry chef there. And that could also, how I've done this in the past as well, at the end of the tea party is provide coupons for that bakery and or that restaurant to then get those participants into that business, into their establishment. You can also allow the guests to help themselves. So if you're limited with servers, it could be a buffet style to just go up and get the pastries themselves. We had volunteers prepare centerpieces ahead of time. And if you have a venue that would be great for this, wonderful. If you could rent an outdoor setting such as a park or a venue, even better of a venue that provides everything for you, tables, chairs, tablecloths, volunteers can set up for the event ahead of time and then also help break down as well once the event is over. To make the events more interesting, we always love to award prizes. And here's where your local businesses can also help with the event, is by providing these award prizes. So you can see here prizes for the best dressed tea party outfit, the best hat of the day, and all this can be decided by a popular vote. So, right, you have these little voting cards at the tables along with the tea and the little samples there. You can get as high tea as you want to in this case, or you can keep it as low key as you want in this case. But once again, knowing your constituent donor database, and is this really going to be something that they would attend in support for your organization? So another event that you can do here, this is one out of Wilmington, North Carolina. So this is a nonprofit organization, the Plastic Ocean Project. So they actually are doing a documentary film screening. And this is their first feature-length documentary. They actually partnered with Cape Fear Community College, their videography program. So if this is something of interest to you, if you are working on a societal issue as part of your nonprofit organization, and you see where a documentary could be beneficial in getting the facts and the statistics out to a larger population and or demographics that can help support your nonprofit organization, then this might be something for you. So they, as you can see, they are going to debut this. They are going to, let's see, the first date for this was on Monday, August the 28th. That was in Wilmington. They have the next viewing is going to be in Charlotte, actually, on Thursday, September the 12th from noon to 1. And that's going to be at the Charlotte Nature and Recreation Center. So this all came about. So the feature length, the documentary, If Oceans Could Talk, it's a voice for the North Atlantic. So it's going to take an in-depth look at the impact of humans on the North Atlantic, and explains how the North Atlantic right whale is headed for extinction. So right now, the North Atlantic right whale, its population has dwindled to around 320. There's only 326 left in this world. It was really kind of catapulted for this nonprofit organization after the death of a young right whale in 2020. That then caused the population to dwindle to 356. Today, in 2023, they're down to 326. And what it really talks about is the plastic issue that we are facing right now. So really getting the message out as to this is going to be an epidemic in this country of plastic, and how it affects our lives as human, and then also animal lives as well. So with this project, they not only partnered with Cape Fear Community College, but they also partnered with a lot of corporations as well to be able to produce this documentary. And at the screenings of this, at the free public screenings, they actually go into great detail and depth on all of the corporate sponsors. And then also they did have a couple of grants that helped them with producing that as well. So kind of continuing that, as you can see here, bringing it back a little closer to home, but still in North Carolina, is the Trine International Film Festival. So a couple of counties over in Polk County, this has been going on for quite some time. So they really showcase and spotlight young film entrepreneurs coming up. And they have a board that selects these films. There's a whole event in which all of these are debuted. In years past, they've utilized a local theater here, the Tryon Fine Arts Theater, and then now the audience has grown so very large, and they've grown out of that location, even with multiple screenings, that they have now moved this to the Tryon International Equestrian Facility, and on the big screen is where that screening is now taking place. But as you know, you all in Shelby have theaters as well there. I think there's the Don Gibson Theater. So if this was something that your nonprofit organization, I'm not sure where the, maybe Amanda or Emily could chime in on this one. I'm not sure where the Rogers Theater, I think the last I heard that was being remodeled, maybe. I'm not sure where that's falling. Am I correct in that? But we do know that the Don Gibson Theater there, that's a theater there in Shelby. So if this was something that your nonprofit organization could benefit from, then partnering with another nonprofit organization and or that collaboration with that nonprofit organization in order to then have those public screenings of that film and or documentary for your organization. Another would be also for your nonprofit organization to promote, right, and preserve the performing arts. This can be benefited by showcasing an organization's offerings as well. The thing that I love about this art walk and benefit is if you look at the save the date here, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I apologize. Let me talk about concerts for one moment here. So in addition to your film and or documentary, you could also showcase plays, concerts, and also poetry readings as well. You, of course, in this situation, you want to charge for tickets. So your volunteers can help set up the sound equipment, also for the concerts and poetry readings alike. For the more involved performances, as you see here on the screen, this is actually a moon howl concert. It was around the full moon every September that this event was held. This is much larger. It's more likely that whoever you're inviting to play at this concert is going to have their own setup. So then your volunteers, it frees them up to take tickets and kind of act as ushers, welcoming everyone to the concert. And then smaller venues make it possible to give those guests kind of that one-on-one attention, and also then convince them to give to your nonprofit organization, not just to purchase tickets for this play, this poetry reading, and or this concert, but also to become a lifelong donor of your nonprofit organization as well. So once again, this was a moon howl concert that was held at a nonprofit organization that I was involved in for many years. It dates way back to the late 80s. I think their first moon howl concert was in 1988 on the grounds. This hill acted as a great amphitheater for such things as concerts. We also did very similar to the steeplechase that is held also in Polk County at the Trina International Equestrian Center. We did tailgating contests as well. So partnered with local grocery stores for people to go and get the wonderful snacks to bring in. There was a food truck, and then also beverages for purchase as well, as if you just thought, you know what, it's late, we're getting off work late, we just want to go to the concert, right? And we want to buy food and drink there, bottled water, whatever the case may be. And then the grocery stores that we partnered with and collaborated with, they would then give a gift card as part of the first, second, and third place tailgating. And so that was one of the winners, as you can see there, that beautiful table set up right in front of their seats. All right, so art, here we go. Got a little ahead of myself, I apologize for that. So in continuing with that, fine arts nonprofit organizations can also showcase what donors made possible. So if your nonprofit organization would much rather do this than a live performance, then an art exhibit allows for an elegant event to showcase artist work and potentially sell pieces that benefit both the artist and the nonprofit organization. But let's say if you're not part of a fine art nonprofit organization, you can still do a very similar thing here. So you see here on Save the Date, what I love about this is 12 art galleries, 12 nonprofit organizations, and 12 raffle packages. So you want to talk about collaboration. This is wonderful. So this is simply what it says. We're walking downtown to all of these art galleries. 12 nonprofit organizations are involved in this. And we're asking, right, all of these art galleries, these potential artists that have artwork to sell during this time. So I was involved in a very similar event in downtown Hendersonville for many years, in which 5 nonprofit organizations collaborated on this. And this was a shopping and wine tasting event. So nonprofit volunteers would hand out the wine glasses, and you would go from business to business, right? Where businesses had art, home decor, a variety of different things for sale. And then you could sample different wines at each location. So you would have wines, and then we also had mocktails as well for those people who do not drink alcohol. Also, you can do this with very minimal staff and volunteer resources. You can also do a self-driving tour as well. Another example of this was a barn tour. So over in Polk County, a nonprofit organization that I was involved in the equestrian community, it was a self-driving barn tour. So once you purchase the ticket, one day only, directions to those barns, and you could drive around and visit those barns. And many of you, if you've driven through Polk County, some of the barns are nicer than most of our homes, actually. The horses are treated very luxuriously in Polk County. And so that drew a very, very large crowd of people every year. And then last but not least are volunteer days. Okay, so we're taking a spin on volunteer days here, everybody. So all nonprofit organizations typically offer some type of hands-on services. So a way to really engage supporters, volunteers with a fundraising event is to ask loyal donors to act as volunteers themselves. So volunteering day, this event brings donors together to experience the work your nonprofit organization does, along working side by side and shoulder to shoulder with you. So you're going to invite supporters to join you. Examples of this would be, as you see on the screen, and which I'll get to in just a moment, but it could be cleaning up a local park. It could be preparing lunches for the homeless or children who can't rely on school lunches, walking adoptable dogs. Whatever hands-on work you have, change your way of thinking about this. This is going to create an opportunity for your small nonprofit organization to further connect your supporters with your organization. So you're going to ask donors to register for a fee. Guess what, everybody? We're charging them to come volunteer and work shoulder to shoulder with us on these volunteer work days. I would not recommend, you could do free registration if you really wanted to get them involved at a deeper level to where they become lifelong volunteers. However, for this one, taking the spin on, we're charging you to come volunteer, okay, with this nonprofit organization. To see the effort that you put in to solve the problems that your nonprofit organization addresses in your community. And it's going to strengthen your case for support. So this event could be conducted on site at one of your locations in a public venue. Because your guests are also your volunteers, not a lot of manpower is needed to set up and execute the event. You could use the volunteers that come that are paying, right, as extra help, right, to set up, to tear down, whatever the case may be. So one of the nonprofit organizations that I was involved in is the U.S. Green Building Council out of Washington, D.C. is where their corporate headquarters are. This was the South Carolina chapter. They had a Homes for Heroes project. So the gentleman in the blue polo shirt with the hat that you see standing in the middle of this was a veteran. This was a Vietnam veteran who was having to pick and choose between paying his power bill and or getting his prescriptions. So we had here, the people around him were donors and supporters of the U.S. Green Building Council South Carolina chapter. They came from Duke Energy. They paid to be there that day to weatherize this veteran's home to reduce the energy costs. Sunoco Recycling out of Columbia, South Carolina, LS3P, which is a large architectural firm that spans South Carolina, and also MB Con Construction was there at that event this day. I'm sorry for the blurry picture. I'm the one that took the picture. I was there at the event that day, and I'm not sure why I could not clear that up. So I apologize for the blurriness of that. But you can imagine the impact that it had on those donors, having to pay for that and then also being there for that as well, and to meet that individual who was getting these services and so very well deserved. So in conclusion, because I want to make sure we leave enough time for questions and answers, and I know this has been kind of fast today. You as smaller nonprofit organizations without an army of volunteers can still run successful fundraising events. And I hope I have showcased a few of those today. And I hope that this gets some creative juices flowing for you and your nonprofit organization. Knowing the types of events that don't require a lot of volunteers to set up, to execute, to tear down, etc., can really benefit nonprofit organizations of any size, especially your smaller nonprofit. So please don't give up on fundraising events, even if your pool is currently small, meaning volunteers and staff. Make sure to focus on the events that complement your organization while not requiring significant amounts of work to pull off. It's also important to remember that fundraising is not just about raising money. It's also about building those lifelong relationships and creating a community of support for your nonprofit organization. So by taking action and implementing, hopefully, some of these strategies that I provided to you today, you can make a real difference in the lives of those that you serve within your nonprofit organization. So I want to, before we open it up for Q&A, I'm going to forward a couple of slides forward and then I'll come back. I want to thank you again for your time and attention today. I know that all of you took time away from something professional and possibly personal lunchtime today to be here with us. And I want to encourage you to continue this learning and seeking support as you work towards your fundraising goals and really impacting the quality of life for the community in which you serve. And talking about building relationships, if you've not had the opportunity, many of you have heard me speak in the past, you've not had the opportunity to watch my TED Talk where I talk about building relationships with donors, with corporate sponsors. It can also be building relationships with foundations as well. I would encourage you to do that. And I do believe that Amanda and Emily will be providing you with this handout after the fact for those who have attended. So if you need that shortened URL link, you certainly will have that available to you. So Amanda and Emily, I have right now a little before 12:55, so we've got a few minutes left for questions.
Thank you, Melissa. Yes, we've had a couple of questions come through the chat. Just to let you know, one question, Melissa, was about the Salesforce software you mentioned, and maybe if you could just explain a little bit about how they would obtain that. If it's, I think you mentioned a discounted price or something through North Carolina. And then to answer the other question, yes, we do plan to upload both webinars, and probably going to be a link off of the Hospice Foundation website so that you guys can access it at any time. But that will happen after the next webinar on Thursday, the 14th.
Sure. And so let me address the first question here about Salesforce, and I'll get into if some of you are like, you know, Melissa, I disagree with you. I'm not a big fan of Salesforce. I'll give you another option here as well. So if you Google Salesforce, Salesforce has a foundation. So they have set up a 501c3 PF, which is a private foundation, and you must apply. It's a one-page application for your nonprofit organization, and they give you Salesforce with up to, I believe it's 500 constituents. So you can have up to 500 constituents on this free version of Salesforce for your nonprofit organization. If you're looking for something a little bit more integrated, you want it to work across, let's say, QuickBooks and other CRM software that you may have, also check out TechSoup.org. So TechSoup provides discounted software for nonprofit organizations. It is also a one-page application process that you have to go through with them. You have to upload your IRS determination letter to prove that you are a nonprofit organization in this country. And then you get discounted. For example, I just checked on for another nonprofit organization last week, QuickBooks, the cloud version. It was an admin fee of $75 for the year. So which is very, acceptable price for a small nonprofit organization. Yeah, great questions.
And if there's any other questions, guys, I just put a note in the group chat, or if you're not comfortable using chat, you're welcome to ask those at this time.
Absolutely. So the question, can you tell me the name of the free nonprofit software you just mentioned? Salesforce, through Salesforce Foundation, and then the website that I just mentioned for discounted. I'll put it in because I know sometimes technology, even though I think I speak pretty clearly, TechSoup.org. Yeah, and they have a free email newsletter for nonprofit organizations looking to get into a little bit more technology savvy.
Yeah, and on that note too, Melissa and Amanda and I both use TechSoup, but also you're able to get Microsoft 365 for free, depending on how many users you have. I use certain Adobe products through TechSoup that I've been able to get at a third of the cost. So that's definitely a key resource for all nonprofits. If you're not familiar with TechSoup, aside from that, donor management software for any software needs that you have as a nonprofit, it's a great resource.
Absolutely.
Yes. And feel free, everyone, to unmute, ask questions if you would like. No questions, comments?
What was the email again for TechSoup?
The address, the website is TechSoup.org.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great information. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you. Appreciate you attending.
I have a question.
Please.
In regards to your tea party, would you say, as far as having a guest speaker, would that be better, or would it be better not to have a guest speaker during the tea party? What do you think will help to engage the donors better?
Oh, Dina, that is a great question. So I've seen it done both ways, obviously. A guest speaker sometimes distracts, right, from the tea party. And what we've done in the past is we do multiple seatings for the tea party, because you're not going to sit there all afternoon at an afternoon tea. So usually it's going to be 30 to 45 minute seatings. So if the guest speaker then has to present at each seating, that can really take up a lot of time of the tea party. So usually it just crowds the agenda. We did that for the first couple of years, and then we just stopped doing a guest speaker. However, if you think that this would attract more people to your event, given who's on your constituent database, then absolutely. Great question.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, and if there's not any other questions, we just hit 1 o'clock. Melissa, you did awesome. That was a lot to cover in 1 o'clock, by 1 o'clock. If there's not any other questions right now, yeah, absolutely, round of applause.
Thank you.
I did want to let you guys know, you probably just got an email in your inbox, a survey just for feedback on the topic that was discussed in this format. So it's a joy for Amanda and I to kind of plan these and put them on, but we need your feedback just to make sure that we're doing what's needed in the community for you guys. So do feel free to complete that. We will have another webinar next Thursday, so hopefully you guys are all registered. If you're not, or if you're not sure, feel free to shoot me an email and we'll make sure that you are registered. And we'll be sending out that link prior to Thursday so that you'll have that one as well. Amanda, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, we just really appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you, Melissa, for doing this for our community. And we look forward to learning more next Thursday.
Yes, yes. Well, you do.
Thank you, everybody. And you guys have a great rest of your afternoon.
Bye.
You will be getting that link from me here, after the next webinar on Thursday for the video that has the slides, as well as Melissa's contact information and a link to her TED Talk. So thank you, everyone, and hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Emily,
Thank you.
Yes.
You as well.
you said the survey, you gonna also send it to our email?
Yes, the survey you will get today to your email.
Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much. Wonderful.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Robert.
Thank you. Y'all have a blessed day.
You
Thank
too.
you.